Hey, I'm Cody Horton, Managing Director for Diverse Recruiting Experts. I've been doing diversity recruiting strategy with companies for a couple of decades. A lot of times we'll say at DRE, we do the grunt work of sourcing so your teams don't have to. I'm thrilled to have Cynthia Barnes as our guest today to share her insight on recruiting and retaining women in sales. Cynthia's going to share some amazing information. I think everybody will walk away with some new insight. Cynthia is the founder and the CEO for the National Association of Women Sales Professionals. Cynthia, you have an amazing background and have worked for some of the most recognized brands in the world.
Thank
And I know that you've got a new book out, and I think it's a must read on Reach the Top 1%, a strategic game plan for warrior women in sales. I think that's a must have, and anybody in sales should grab that book. So
thank
I'm
you.
really thrilled to have you on and to have you share some insight.
I'm excited to be here. I'm so glad you reached out, and I'm looking forward to our conversation as well as engaging with everyone that's here.
Yeah, I do want to remind everyone, hey, if you've got um, something that you want to get out of, in fact, I think what is the one thing that you'd like to learn from this webinar? Put that in the chat box or in the Q&A so Cynthia can make sure we hit on that.
Mhm.
And then just a reminder to everyone, if Cynthia says something that is an aha moment for you, then retweet it. And you can put the hashtag sales AHA, sales AHA, and you can do that at Cynthia M Barnes on Twitter, or just pop it in the chat box. We'd love to see that. And so, Cynthia, without me taking up any more of the air, tell us a little bit about your journey and what got you to the place that you are today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, like a lot of women in sales, I started out selling a myriad of products and services in different verticals, everything from recruiting salespeople, recruiting office staff, to pharmaceuticals, the legal kind, high end skincare. And my last corporate role was in logistics. I was a glorified freight broker. And then in 2016, I said, I've been at the top 1% of all these different verticals. Where's the challenge anymore? I could go to another vertical, but I was expecting the same thing based upon previous performance. So I said, what do I do? And I was on Facebook the other day, or back in 2016, and Facebook is the ultimate philosopher with their memes. And one of them, and I'm going to butcher this, but it said, the true test of whether or not you are a success in life is not measured by how well you do, it's measured by how many others you help do well. So I thought, okay, Cynthia, instead of going into another vertical, being another sales leader, being another individual contributor, how about you start an organization that helps other women reach the top 1%, whatever that looks like for them. So it could be the top of the leaderboard, it could be top of sales leadership, it could be mother of the year, whatever it is, help them be that. And so that's what I did in 2016. I started NAWSP.
Wow, it's amazing that you've done that. And when you think about your vision for NAWSP, um, what are some of the things that kind of come to mind where you could look back and say, here are some things that I think have been successful that would benefit either other organizations or even some of the companies that are doing this.
It may be Pollyanna of me to say this, but I truly want to help women in sales show up as their best selves in crucial moments where influence matters most. And if you think about sales, sales is merely influencing decision makers to say yes. So if we can help women in sales be their best selves, be confident, be assertive instead of passive or passive aggressive or aggressive, and influence those decision makers, whether it's coworkers, whether it's teammates, whether it's leadership, whether it's their prospects and customers, if we can influence them to say yes, then we win. And that's what it's all about, showing up as our best selves.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I think today there's going to be something for not only the companies that are responsible for hiring and growing and retaining women in sales, but also for individuals who are in sales themselves and are looking at ways to expand their careers. And so How do companies actually position themselves as an employer of choice for women in sales?
There are so many things that companies can do. And the first one is to develop a women in sales initiative. A lot of companies will go after women in sales for attraction and hiring, but they're missing the third component, which is development. So there are four pillars of a successful women in sales initiative: attract, hire, develop, so that you can retain. If you don't develop your women in sales, you will not retain them, and you will waste all types of resources, time, money, effort on trying to attract and hire them. We also need to take a look at marketing practices. You say you want women in sales, but if your ads and your marketing materials show only one race, one gender, that doesn't happen to be women, diverse women, then how can you expect to get women to feel like they would be welcome at your company? Take a look at your job descriptions. Are you using a whole bunch of aggressive language, such as "we want hunters, we want rock stars and killer mentality"? That doesn't make women feel like they're going to belong. Are there foosball tables and beer drop Fridays at your company? Nothing wrong with those, but typically those exclude women rather than create a sense of belonging. Cody, if I invite you to dinner and give you a seat at the table and don't actually offer you anything to eat, you can feel like a guest in my home for a minute. Inclusion is great. I included you by giving you a seat at the table. But if I don't feed you and make you feel welcome, how do you feel a sense of belonging? And that's what's missing in a lot of companies who say they want to attract, hire, develop, and retain women in sales, is the belonging.
Yeah, that's really powerful. One of the things that when I talk to people about inclusion and diversity, equity and belonging, is I talk about the fact that you need to be intentional about what you're doing, not just make it an accident that happened just because somebody tried something, we accidentally were successful.
Right.
Uh, from your perspective, how do companies actually create policies and procedures to ensure that, the top talent actually stays with them and they are able to experience the things that you talk about belonging and inclusion?
A couple of quick things. One of which I will reference an experience I had. I was at a roundtable discussion, and I was leading a group of male sales leaders. And I asked them, if an individual contributor who happens to be a man comes to you and says that he wants to go into sales leadership, what do you coach him on? And they said things like forecasting, P&L, the number side. And
Right.
then I said, okay, let's flip it. If a female individual contributor comes to you and wants to ascend to sales leadership, what do you coach her on? And they said, well, primarily soft skills like relationship building and empathy and the soft skills. And I said, okay, why the difference? And they looked around at each other and kind of shrugged and said, well, that's the way we've always done it. So when you're developing policies and procedures for women to ascend to sales leadership, which everyone that I talk to wants to get more women in sales leadership because it attracts more women in sales for their individual contributor roles, you have to coach people on the same thing to give them access to the same strengths and the same leadership qualities. If you're going to coach on emotional intelligence, then everybody gets coached on emotional intelligence. The same thing with forecasting, the same thing with P&L. There should not be a difference based upon the gender, and that's what we find too often. And another thing I wanted to mention is 99.9% of the companies that I talk to have no policies in place to protect their female workers or male workers against bad behavior, AKA sexual harassment, at the hands of a prospect or customer. They have internal policies that protect from coworkers. But if a woman is sexually harassed at the hands of a prospect, what does she do? She can't go back to her boss because he is not trained or coached on how to handle it. So many times I talk to our members and I say, well, what do you do? And they say, well, a myriad of things. Number one, I knew what I was expected to do when I took the job. I knew what I was signing up for. Or I go to my boss and he says, well, what do you want me to do? not being flippant, but he really or she doesn't really know what to do because there hasn't been education in that realm. And the last thing they say is, I have a mortgage to pay, Cynthia. I'm not about to go to my manager for fear that he or she is going to take that account away from me because I've got bills to pay. So those are little things that can be really impactful, but that nobody's thinking about.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And when a lot of times leaders are in roles, when you're a leader, you don't necessarily have all that expertise and knowledge to do some of the things that you just talked about. Um, what are some of the other, challenges that leaders face when they have women on their sales team? I mean, that's a big one. And I could see people getting frozen and stuck and not knowing what to do next. What are
Mhm.
some of the other things that they're facing, and if you've got any guidance on how you kind of move forward from that perspective?
I'm sure that a lot of people have read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or something like that.
Yeah.
Women in sales have different needs and they sell differently. So many times I've heard women say, my boss tells me I'm selling wrong because I'm not doing it his or her way. There is no right way to sell. There is no wrong way. There is no right way. It's the right way is the authentic way. So if a woman in sales knows the objective, which is to influence that decision maker to say yes, then empower her, give her the courage and the support to say, however you get it done, as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical, I stand behind you. But a lot of sales leaders don't know how to coach. So they say, this is the way it's done, follow this script, do it this way. And if you don't, then you're wrong.
Yeah, that brings me to this next question around some of the differences, right? I mean, diversity is about differences. Inclusion is certainly about bringing everybody in and valuing that. How is managing women in a sales team different from managing men on the sales team generally?
First of all, there are more similarities than there are differences. The assumptions that I hear are that women can't manage a full time role and a family life. And that could be it could be nothing could be further from the truth. The women that I know that are in sales are excellent time managers. They manage their priorities very, very well. And the busier they are, the better they are at managing those priorities because they have to be. Think about this. If you're a woman, and let's say a typical single mother, you've got to manage soccer practice, daycare, illnesses, um, ballet practice, and you've got to manage a full time job. Not to mention, if you're married, you also have that extra hat of being a wife. During COVID, a lot of women were now full time teacher, and they still reach the top 1% because they're excellent priority managers. So to say that women can't handle being both family oriented and work focused is a huge mistake.
When you talked about the time management thing, one of the things that was on my list of things to ask you about, and this is because my own personal desire to get better at this, is um, you seem to have an amazing ability to manage your calendar. Um, I have not had any problems getting connected to you, and I really want to get, what's the secret? What's your secret for being able to manage the calendar? Because I'm terrible at it, and you seem to handle it with so much poise and professionalism.
Thank you. I pride myself on being accessible to my clients, to my partners, to my members. I never want anyone to think I can't get a hold of Cynthia. So I pride myself on being accessible, and I have boundaries. So I rarely take a meeting that's more than 20 minutes. I ask for an agenda prior to the meeting. So when you sign up, either through my executive assistant or through my Calendly or Acuity, whatever software I'm using,
Yeah.
it will ask you what 3 points would you like to discuss in our meeting. We have 20 minutes. I call it a virtual latte, and we get in, get done, and get out. Someone told me, Cynthia, be brief, be brilliant, be gone. So at 20 minutes with 5 minutes in between, I can have a ton of appointments. That's how I fit it all in.
It's really amazing, and you do a phenomenal job of it. You touched on this a little bit, and I wanted to get a little bit more depth from you on it. What are some of the common myths about women in sales?
A lot of the time, we are called emotional, when in fact, that emotion that we possess may come across emotional, but it's actually passion. If a woman displays tears, if she displays emotion, that's not a bad thing. There was a meme once that said it was talking about relationships. When your woman responds to "How are you?" and she says "Fine," that is a red flag. When women don't feel the passion anymore for your product, for your service, for your organization, that's the time to worry. So I wish that leaders would stop seeing emotion as a detriment and say, how can we channel this emotion, AKA passion, into fueling her and developing her into a great leader? It's all in perspective. Another myth about women in sales, I hinted on it before, is that we can't handle more than one thing. We can. We multitask well and we manage our priorities very, very well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I wanted to check, Jesse. I don't know if you see any questions in the chat. I'm a little bit blind to the chat box because of the size of the screen that I'm on. So if either of you see any questions in the chat box, let's see if we can tackle a couple of those.
I would love to answer some questions. We did have a comment from Jackie. She said, great point. Thank you. My pleasure, Jackie. I know that women in sales are fantastic. I would like to know, Anita, Christopher, Dawn, Jackie, Jacob, Kristen, what do you do? Are you sales leaders? Are you individual contributors? Tell me what you do. I'd like to know. And Kristen asks a question, when looking through the lens of D&I, what are the challenges growing women from individual sales roles to senior sales leadership? Kristen, that is an excellent question. Number one, there has to be the opportunity. Too many times, well, let me back up. On average, sales leaders are only 11% female. So that means 89% of sales leaders are male. If your company has a sales leadership role and it is filled by a woman, what the company is showing the individual contributors is we only have one female sales leadership position. It's filled. You don't have a snowball's chance and you know where of getting it because we've only made one available. That also teaches women, oh my gosh, I've got the coveted spot. I've got to hold on to it. That breeds a culture of competition rather than collaboration. And even though women are natural collaborators, we're also human. And if there is only one position available, we are going to hold on to it because we've got a mortgage to pay, we've got a family to feed. So through the lens of D&I, if you want more sales leaders that are women, make positions available for them to do it. Also, create a strategic path for them to ascend to sales leadership and make it available to everyone. Encourage your female individual contributors to speak up and say, why not me? I heard that there was a leadership position on a committee available. What about me? Teach them that leadership is not necessarily just a title, but it can be also found in head of committees, ERGs, things like that. And lastly, create a safe space for women to speak up. Too many times women are afraid of saying something because it's not a safe space to do so. They get their hands slapped. They're told, okay, that's just the way it's always been done. Every piece of feedback you get is a gift. It may not be welcome in the right realm. Let's change that. I hope that answered your question. Let me know if I didn't.
Yeah, that is a great answer. I mean, that's advice that all of us can take. One of the things we're assuming here is we've got women who are already in sales and they're already, have some level of track record. How do you recognize that somebody has the potential to be more successful in sales, right? Because a lot of times we have those cookie cutter sales profiles, the persona that we want to go after that you talked
Mhm.
about earlier. But how do you actually recognize that potential and actually encourage someone to get into sales because you believe they can be a successful salesperson?
First of all, everybody sells. Some of us just get paid for it. I'm serious. I'm serious. When my niece turned 5, she came to me and she said, "Auntie, I want to go rock climbing for my birthday." I said, "Baby girl, you've got to be 6 years old to go rock climbing." We had a complete debate over her maturity level, her size, her ability to climb the rocks, her familiarity with rock climbing. She was influencing me. My job was to influence her that despite the fact that she had all of this evidence and compelling evidence at 5 years old, she couldn't do it. So if you are a parent, an auntie, whomever, you sell, you influence decision makers to say yes. As leaders, it is our job to look at the transferable skills that someone possesses and and mold them into how can you become a better seller with those transferable skills, relationship building, empathy, time management. You don't have to have a proven track record of sales to be an excellent salesperson. You need a coach to show you how to mold your craft into being an excellent salesperson.
Yeah, that's great. I want to encourage everyone. If you've got questions, make sure you put them in the chat box or in the Q&A section. Do we see any other questions that are in there?
Yes. Jacob says, honestly, I'm a mixed bag. I work for, oh, this is, yeah, I was asking what people do. So he works for DRE as an expert recruiter, as well as the director of recruiting operations for another company. Client facing at the other company. He's a life cycle from sales. Awesome. 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 Kristen says she is in business development. And let me see if we have a question here. We got that one answered. Yes, yes. What else would you like to talk about, Cody?
Yeah,
Because
you
we
know
are on
what?
fire today.
You've done an amazing job of starting your organization, and you've got a book out that's helping. And I watched a number of videos that you've done. What are some of the things that you're doing with with the organization? What are some things you're doing, and what's the draw for women to join the organization, or even more importantly, when women join the org? How about some of the influencers, right? Recruiting leaders, sales leaders. These might be men, but can you talk a little bit about the kind of the makeup of the organization?
Sure. Prior to COVID, we held 120 events around the United States and a few of them in Europe. And I told myself as a former teacher, I said, if women are going to give up their evening, they've got to be able to walk away with some actionable steps that impact their lives, whether it's personally or professionally. So at NAWSP, we pride ourselves on, yes, you're going to get a networking component. You're going to arrive at an event, wine and bruschetta, talk with everyone, rub elbows, shake hands, give hugs. And then we're going to get down into a life-changing mind awareness um, type of event. So whether it's amplifying your executive presence, things like that. So when COVID hit, we stopped doing events for the safety of our community. So now we do them virtually. So we offer master classes. And prior to COVID, it was a lot of hard skills, prospecting, lead generation, the tangibles, if you will. With COVID, because everyone is for a lack of a better word, struggling with the new normal, we talked about soft skills. We talked about, okay, you're the only one woman on your sales team. Come be with a community of women who will support you, who will encourage you. Take some master classes on how to sell on video or how to amplify your emotional intelligence, to raise your empathy. things like that. So we have 2 master classes a week, and we have a community, and we have a job board. So for those who are looking for other opportunities, they can hop on the job board. We have virtual career fairs with our recruiters that want to tap into our membership and talk about all the wonderful things that are going on with their company. So our community is robust, it's active, and I welcome anyone to join.
Yeah, I think what you're providing an amazing resource and a channel to for both employers as well as individuals.
Thank
Are there
you.
any things that you would recommend the listeners, or because we're going to have people live on the webinar? I think more of the power is going to come from people that are going to be listening to a podcast or watching this on video. What can they do to move themselves forward as a sales professional, or even help their organizations move forward?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Anita asked something similar. She said, "What advice would you give an aspiring woman in sales to help them grow and develop?" Anita, become a professional salesperson. And I'll give you an analogy. I walked in when I was in pharmaceutical sales. I had just finished the 6-week course, and I was proud because it was the hardest thing I'd ever done with all the chemistry and all that good stuff. I had my brand new Amex card. I had my brand new car, and I walked into the doctor's office, and I pulled out my brag book, and I was going through all of the things that described the benefits of my drug to his patient population. And he stopped me and he looked me dead in my teeth and he said, "How long did you study this drug?" And I said, 6 weeks. And I'm excited, right? And he says, "I went to school for 12 years. How can you stand there and tell me that with your 6 weeks of education, you can know more about my patient population and what's best for them?" I was
Wow.
floored. I was floored. And
Wow.
so I couldn't say anything. In one of the rare moments, I was just speechless. And I went home and I thought about it and I thought about it and I thought about it. And I said, he's exactly right. My approach was all wrong. I went in to tell him what he needed to do instead of asking him what would help him help his patient population. And then I realized something that changed my career. I would never go to a doctor that didn't subscribe to or read the American Medical Association journals. I would never go to a lawyer if I were on being, on trial. I would never go to a lawyer that didn't have books and books and books of legal theory. And I sure as heck, as a business owner, would never get my taxes done by someone who didn't stay up to date with the tax laws. So if we are going to be professional saleswomen, we owe it to ourselves and to our prospects to be professionals. That means taking courses. That means reading an hour a day of a sales related book. That means professional development all the time. We have to be professionals to be seen as professionals, or else we're going to be seen as mediocre, someone trying to push something rather than a professional problem solver. So my advice would be professional development should come first. An hour a day reading. Start with 15 minutes and add 5 minutes a week. But you've got to develop yourself before you can even begin to know what's best for your prospect or customer.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, it is amazing to have you share that. I don't know if we see any other questions in the chat or in the Q&A.
Yes, yes. Someone asked, what things could the audience do to move forward with a better approach to growing and more successful women in sales? The companies that I work with that want to develop women in sales actually have a Women in Sales initiative, have a Woman in Sales ERG, which is different than a Women at XYZ company. When you have a Women at XYZ company, it's a great start. And what happens is when you have women in engineering mixed with women in marketing, women in sales, you're mixing everyone together and you're neglecting what the individual group is going through. Women in sales are a unique breed. We are special. We go through things with our clients, with our prospects, with our managers. It's a multifaceted role and it's emotional as heck. Sales is the only profession I know where you prospect and get rejected 90%, 9 out of 10 times a day, and you wake up the next morning to do it again. So I don't know if it's insanity or if it's just the rejection. We face different challenges. So you've got to have a women in sales ERG. And the last thing is have training, development that addresses the needs of your diverse populations and segments. We offer women in sales training, and the women in sales that attend our training from companies like Toyota and Google come back and say, oh my gosh, I never knew that selling as a woman could be different. And development is designed, number one, to address the unique challenges that women in sales face, as well as amplifying the innate strengths that we have. If your sales program doesn't do that, then give me a call.
Yeah, no, that's great that you share that. I'd be remiss not to have you talk a little bit about your book. It's an amazing book. I'm going to be reading it. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my number one list of things to read. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I took the book and I'm so proud of it. It's a quick read. It's success strategies that I've learned over the course of my career as an individual contributor and a sales leader. So I talk about things like becoming a professional, accepting responsibility for everything. Too many times I hear excuses of my boss won't do this, my husband won't do that. You know what? You can either have excuses or you can have results. You can't have both. And it's tough love. For those that want to reach the top 1%, they don't accept excuses. They accept responsibility for everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly that happens with them. So it's an encouraging book. It's matter of fact, because that's how I am. When you read it, though, you're going to wake up energized the next morning and say, you know what? I got this. I got this. If all the trials and tribulations that Cynthia went through and she handled it with grace in class, I can too.
It's great. It's great to hear that. So one of the things that I would love to get your insight on, what's the one or two things that people could leave here today and feel like they're making progress?
Let's see. I was typing a message to Jesse to where to get the book. Amazon. Um, something that women in sales could do, or something that DE&I leaders can do. Quote Cody.
I think something that maybe one for each, right? So the
Okay.
person that's going to hear this, that would be, hey, I'm trying to enable my sales force, because I talk to recruiting leaders and D&I folks all the time that are trying to grow their sales forces and include more women in the sales force. And then I talk to individual people who are maybe early in their sales career that are trying to figure out how do I scale this? Any one or two things that either one of those groups would be able to walk away with.
Sure. For DE&I leaders who are trying to source more women in sales, highly qualified women in sales, you have to go where they are. 78% of the Fortune 500 are trying to increase the number of women in their companies. Sales is normally one of the largest departments. So the quickest route to the overarching goal is to recruit and hire more women in sales. That being said, 36% of them partner with affinity organizations to do just that. If you're trying to hire a trucker, you go to trucker.com. If you're trying to hire a woman in sales, you don't want to put ads on Indeed and ZipRecruiter and all of those, because you're going to get anybody. And when you try to attract anybody and everybody, you miss anybody and everybody. So what I would suggest, the first thing, is to go where your target candidate is. If you're looking for diverse women in sales, look for associations that have diverse women in sales. That would be my suggestion. For women in sales who want to level up, if you want to level up quickly, I would recommend, let's see, the number one thing is to read. There's so many books. There are so many books out there. So much professional development available. Make professional development an intentional thing, because as my friend Roderick says, hope is not a strategy.
I love, I love that. And you mentioned um, go to places where people are. And so, National Association of Women Sales Professionals, definitely a place that people should go. I know I want to be respectful of the time and see. It looks like there might be a question in the
Uh-huh.
Q&A.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
do you
There are
want to fill
three.
that one?
Yes. Jackie said, you mentioned coaching. What other advice would you give an aspiring woman in sales to help them grow and develop? Coaching is one, mentorship is one, and coaching, mentorship, and I think those are the basic two, coaching and mentorship. Mentorship is huge because mentorship allows you to get help from someone you want to be like. It also, and if it's done well, inspires you, encourages you, and equips you to reach back. Remember, as we seek to rise up, we must reach back to help someone else. That's how this thing works. We can't be selfish and say, well, I want to get all this stuff and climb to the top of the ladder without helping someone else behind you. So rise up and reach back. That's what I would say. Don wants to know, Cynthia, we know there are definite differences between men and women. What are some unique advantages that you believe women bring to sales? I either need more coffee or more sleep.
Hey,
Um,
you're doing great. You're doing
thank
great
you.
since you're running this thing. I'm running it from my phone, so I should be paying you to run this thing for me.
Not at oh gosh, this is fun. Partnership, teamwork makes the dream work.
Love
Yes.
it.
So the biggest difference, Dawn, is relationship building. Women are nurturers. We have that innate strength to and the innate ability to develop relationships. We teach women that at NAWSP, know your prospect or your customer like you do your best friend. When you ask those questions that make your customer feel like Mary Kay says, that Mary Kay always used to say, make everyone or to pretend everyone's wearing a sign that says, make me feel important. Women do that naturally. There's another expression that says it's better to be interested than be interesting. Women ask questions and make you feel like I care. When a woman asks, how are you? And then follows it up with, no, really, how are you? And she listens, magical things happen. Magical
Yeah.
things happen. And I wish that more women would tap into those innate abilities that we are born with, because we are great sellers already. Already. Yes.
Great.
Jackie wants to know what type of professional organizations are out there for women in sales. Well, I am going to shamelessly plug National Association of Women Sales Professionals at nawsp.org. Come join us.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Is there another one? I think we have time for one more question from the Q&A
Yes.
or the chat.
Yes. In the Q&A, it's awesome to see a growing population of diversity throughout sales and sales leadership. Yes, it is. What would you say are some of the unique advantages that the diverse population has in sales? My father always tells me we attract on similarities and we grow on differences. So when you are thinking about having a diverse sales team from strictly a business and fiduciary standpoint, diverse teams in the top quartile of diversity are 27% more likely to exceed their targets.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I know I promised one more question, but I think I saw a question flash in the chat box about
Okay.
recruiters.
Let's see. I'm a new recruiter. I'd like to gain as much knowledge as possible about how to be a better recruiter sourcer. Tips on improving our efforts, creative strategies for sourcing, helping grow and retain our great leaders. Well, we should definitely talk, Jesse.
Yeah,
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 definitely.
we should definitely talk. I love the commitment to diversity that you've expressed. A lot of people give lip service and say, it's a nice to have because of the financial benefits.
Yeah,
The intangible benefits far outweigh the tangible ones. And I'm happy to see that.
Well, Cynthia, you've been gracious with your time, and you definitely have really brought it to the house today. That's a mic drop as far as I'm concerned. Um, how can people get in touch with you about anything that's coming up now or something in the future? What are the best ways for them to reach you?
Sure. I am on LinkedIn all the time. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can also email me at cynthia@nawsp.org. And if you'd like to become a member, we would love to have you. You can join us at nawsp.org. And then
That's awesome.
my book is available on Amazon. It's only $10. It's a quick read. Read it out by the pool or at the lake. But yeah, I would love to. And if you want a signed copy of it, you could actually, if you go to nawsp.org, you could read the first chapter for free and then sign up to get a signed copy.
Cynthia, this has been amazing. I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're super busy, and I really appreciate you joining and sharing this. A lot of people are going to benefit from it. I
Awesome.
definitely encourage people to get your book, Reach the Top 1%, a strategic game plan for warrior women in sales. I'll have my copy before the day is out. And I really appreciate this. This has been very helpful and
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Anita, Christopher, Don, George, Jackie, Jacob. Thank you, Kay, for attending today. Your energy has been amazing. Thank you, Cody, for having me. Jesse behind the scenes. Cody, you're amazing. You and your team are doing incredible things to level the playing field and move the needle for women in sales. And I, on behalf of NAWSP, are grateful.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I really appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, you too.
Take care.